It's dawn in this South Indian temple town, a brief, still moment of cool. Walking in the half-light, sleepy, I'm startled by something coiled on the veranda. A snake, and from the looks of it, sleepy too. Best wait for it to move off on its own. As the light rises, I look again and I laugh. What snake? It's merely a coiled rope left behind by a man who's been fixing the tiled roof. This little bit of self-deception, mistaking a rope for a snake, isn't just an occasional practical occurrence in Indian life. It's among the most well-known, hackneyed, popular examples in Indian philosophical thought. Its purpose is to show that while the sensory, empirical world is real, our minds are tricksters. What we see is sometimes not what we think it to be. Conversely, the reality we sense, superimposing a snake on a rope, exists only so far as we believe it.
Hindu philosophy is pervaded by mistakings, by metaphors of concealment and obscuration. They serve as examples of Maya, a reality that's substantially there, but whose true nature eludes us because of the limitations of our consciousness. If we can push aside this slippery and illusory reality, though, we can find something pure and constant, the world of universal spirit, Brahman. This belief in Maya, which hides Brahman, is at the core of what many today see as the philosophy of Hinduism. And we owe that definition of Hinduism to a philosopher and religious teacher who lived in the 8th century, Adi Shankaracharya.
All this universe being other than the self is unreal. For the self alone is all-inclusive and is self-established and self-dependent.
Shankaracharya established his first Hindu monastery, or mutt, at Sringeri, now a pilgrimage town in Karnataka, southwest India.
To get to Sringeri, you have to take narrow hill roads that wind up through the hills of northern Karnataka, past miles and miles of coffee plantation, tall palms and splays of bamboo.
It's a little hill town, the mutt and temple separated by a river set amidst meadows. Shankaracharya, or Shankara as he was also known, transformed existing Hindu beliefs and practices. And in many ways, it's he who made the faith what it is today, the third largest religion in the world. While there's some dispute about dates, it's generally reckoned that Shankara was born in the 8th century in the Malabar region of southern India, today's Kerala state. In Europe, this was the era of Charlemagne pursuing a bloody expansion of Christendom in his campaigns against the Saxons, Saracens, Moors and Slavs, and gaining for himself Rome's Christian imperium. Shankara's campaign to a certain extent Hindu beliefs was vastly different. It was an intellectual struggle, prosecuted through debates he held across the length and breadth of India. As we've now come to expect with the ancient Indians, there's much uncertainty and dispute about our man's early life. According to some religious biographies, written in verse several hundred years later, Shankara's long childless parents had prayed to Shiva, the Hindu deity, at a nearby temple. Shiva, appearing to them in a dream, presented a choice. They could have a son who was a brilliant philosopher, all-knowing and virtuous, but short-lived, or one who would live long, but without any special virtue or greatness. They opted for the smart kid, whom they named Shankara, another name for Shiva. As promised, he turned out to be a child prodigy, mastering the 4 Vedas, the oldest Hindu scriptures, by the age of 8, and adding his own written commentaries by the age of 16. But his brilliance quickly proved a double-edged thing for his mother. His father had died when he was very young, and Shankara, as a good son, was expected to provide for his mother. Instead, at the age of 5, some say, while others say 8, he declared his desire to become a sannyasi, an ascetic wandering monk.
Shankaracharya's precocious choice of sannyas was a scandal. He was skipping over the usual stages of a Hindu man's life: student, householder, hermit, and then only finally religious wanderer. But he prevailed on his widowed mother. The poor woman seems to have been faced with quite a few hard choices in life, and so off he went, establishing temples and mutts across the length of India at the 4 cardinal geographic points of the subcontinent: Badrinath in the north, Puri in the east, Dwarka in the west, and here at Sringeri in the south. And they continue to exist, their head priests often in rivalry with one another.
His teachings gained many devoted followers, and have many still today. In fact, they're all around me, coming here to pilgrimage at the Sringeri Mutt and temple.
The earliest ideas about what later came to be known as Hinduism are found in the Vedas, and they were developed by the Upanishads, dating from 2,500 years ago. These Sanskrit writings, known as the Vedanta, or the end of the Vedas, began to answer some of the eternal questions that had been posed in the Vedas. Where do we come from? Why are we here? And where do we go? In the Upanishads, we find ideas of reincarnation and of how individual action in this life can shape our chances in the next one. Shankaracharya immersed himself in these texts, drawing them together into an intellectual system. Janardhan Ganeri is professor of philosophy at New York University.
Shankara's ambition was to provide a unified, single reading of the great plurality and diversity of the Hindu scriptures. So he wrote commentaries on almost all of the key Hindu scriptures that formed the canon and attempted to provide them with a single interpretation, which for him was a form of monism. That is to say, he thought there was just one real entity, the name of which is Brahman, the fundamental grounding principle of the universe, and that everything else, all the apparent distinctions and differences in the world, including differences between different individual selves, are illusory.
Shankara's monism was crucially different from monotheism. Unlike the jealous paternal god of the Abrahamic faiths, and unlike, too, the superhuman personal gods of the Vedic pantheon, Shankara's Brahman was without positive attributes, a god or all-pervading substance without qualities. You cross over a bridge and climb a hill to get to the Sringeri Mutt, the monastery established by Shankaracharya. Its modern incarnation is somewhat different from when it was founded in the 8th century, and so it would seem are some of the practices of the present-day monks, who are maybe a little forgetful of Shankaracharya's original views.
Shankara believed that there was something more valuable in the Vedas, the ancient scriptures, than mere ritual injunctions. For instance, the recitation of mantras, word sounds whose repetition was supposed to up one's karmic investment fund, and so to improve chances of escape from the cycle of birth and death. For Shankaracharya, that was a misunderstanding of the individual's spirit's path to liberation. To him, the Vedas, and especially the later Upanishads, contained knowledge, jnan, which revealed the essential unity of man and the cosmos. So Vedic Hinduism had to be newly formulated. Its obsession with rituals must be replaced by asceticism, celibacy, and intellectual rigor. Instead of mantras, he prescribed, therefore, meditative reflection, through which each individual could come to recognize the identity between his or her own essence and Brahman, universal spirit. Once we grasp that oneness with the eternal, we attain moksha.
Moksha, release from the cycle of birth and death. Shankaracharya's doctrine came to be known as Advaita Vedanta, which crystallized existing beliefs into a new religious philosophy. His efforts to capture the oneness of the universe
produced beautiful and sometimes enigmatic sentences.
I am neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor air, nor sense organ, nor the aggregate of all these. For all these are transient. I am neither above nor below, neither inside nor outside, neither middle nor across, neither the east nor west. For I am indivisible, one by nature, and all-pervading like space.
But Shankara was also a masterful popularizer of his difficult teachings, composing devotional songs and hymns that are widely sung even today. This is Bhaja Govindam in praise of Krishna by the celebrated Carnatic vocalist M.S. Subbalakshmi.
Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate.
The version of Hinduism Shankara propagated gained popularity, but there are aspects of it not all Hindus would share or even recognize. Wendy Doniger, professor of the history of religions at the University of Chicago.
Shankara's there. Everybody knows about him. Some people use him as their own guide to their own thinking about the meaning of life. And those people say that's what Hinduism really is, but it's really not true. It's what some of Hinduism is. The trouble is that one branch of Hinduism, which includes the Shankara tradition, the philosophical tradition, was very attractive to the British when they came to India and they began the British Raj. They liked that it was a philosophical tradition. They could come to terms with that. The rest of Hinduism, which is to say most of Hinduism, with the gods with many arms and goddesses that drink warm blood, the British didn't really like that part of Hinduism. So the Hindus who worked with the British, which is to say quite a lot of people, they became ashamed of that part of their own religion.
It was Hindu revivalists and nationalists who at the end of the 19th and in the 20th century embraced Shankara's monism as Hinduism's muscular response to the monotheistic religions of Christianity and Islam. So proselytizers like Vivekananda, whom we'll hear about later in this series, invoked Shankara's ideas and argued for the creation of schools to promote Advaita Vedanta and to foster national self-pride. The present-day Shankaracharyas may be the nearest thing Hinduism has to a pope or papacy. But Hinduism itself remains as it was when Shankara lived, multiple in form, bubbling with internal arguments, and accepting of different forms of belief. There's no single defining text or interpreter. What there are mesmerizing questions, puzzles, daybreak doubts about the nature of our perceptions, the limits of our self, the relationship between that self and the unceasing flow of time.
Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari tulyam nijantargatam pasyanatmani mayaya bhaivorutam yata nibraya yasakshat kurute prabodha samaye swatmanamevodvayam tasmai sri gurumurtaye namaidam sri dakshinamurtaye Jagadivankuro jagadidam pranilvikalpam punah maya kalpita desha kala kalana vaichitrya chistrikritam maya viva vijrumbhayasyapi maha yogi vayasvechaya tasmai sri guru